Good morning. Welcome to the press conference on COVID. With us today are the Chief Executive and the Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. They would first speak before the floor is open for questions. Please keep your mask on and maintain social distancing. Chief Executive, please. Friends from the media, members of the public, since the fifth wave of the pandemic started in early January, it has been nearly 3 months. As I said back in early January, in face of the fifth pandemic, we did not adopt a gradual approach. Instead, we put in place the most stringent measures immediately, and we have put in place the stringent measures in the last few years to prevent local cases and importation of cases. These include region-specific flight suspension mechanism, social distancing measures, etc. In the past, they were gradually tightened, and this time they were tightened altogether on January the 7th. I understand that many individuals and companies have expressed concerns in recent months, and in recent days, some foreign chambers of commerce, financial institutions, and overseas media organizations express concerns over the roles of Hong Kong as an international financial hub and business center. So this morning, together with the SFST, I will brief you on the situation. At different occasions, I have indicated that I place great emphasis on the international status of Hong Kong. As Chief Executive, in the first 2 years of my term, I made a number of overseas visits, and I have attended the World Economic Forum 3 times in order to elevate the international status of Hong Kong and to tell the success story of Hong Kong under one country, two systems. So the SAR government has never underestimated Hong Kong's status as an international financial center, business center, aviation, and logistics center. However, the well-being of the public is always the top priority, and in this regard, we had to take out anti-epidemic measures. These measures would more or less affect individuals and companies. We do not have specific figures, but in terms of calls that Hong Kong has experienced a brain drain in recent days, including management executives. I believe that could be the case. But after the pandemic is over, I believe Hong Kong will see positive opportunities. Since the pandemic eased, we have taken a series of measures. On March the 21st, I announced that the flight suspension mechanism for visitors from 9 places would be cancelled. We also introduced extra quarantine hotel rooms. We also rationalized the flight or airline suspension mechanism to somewhat resume travel between different places. Yesterday, with the International Business Committee, which is chaired by the Chief Secretary. It was set up a number of years ago. I used to be Chief Secretary for 4 years, and as such, I have close ties with the IBC. Yesterday, I invited members of the IBC who are representatives from different chambers of commerce, including the Consul General and Honorary Consul Generals. We held a teleconference with 130 participants. I indicated that the measures announced in March would be gradually implemented, and I also address some of their concerns. We will continue our work on this front. Now I would invite Mr. Christopher Hui to brief us on the situation of Hong Kong as a financial center, and we will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Members of the public, friends from the media, good morning. Today I will talk about the financial stability of Hong Kong in face of a pandemic and the government support measures in the financial arena and our strategy in nurturing talent in finance. Hong Kong, as an international financial center, will strive to connect with the mainland and overseas to further develop the financial markets. Through these measures, we have encouraged global talents and companies to take root in Hong Kong and continue to exercise their roles. In terms of the operation of the financial markets in Hong Kong, they have continued to operate in a stable manner in face of the pandemic. Since March, the stock market turnover stands at about $180 billion, and the southbound trade volume is about 100 billion renminbi and 42 billion Hong Kong dollars, up 4%. This explains that Hong Kong still functions efficiently as an international financial center to provide necessary capitalization and valuation services. From a macro perspective, global markets have faced different risks, including volatility in tech stocks, the tense geopolitical conditions in Ukraine, the interest rate hikes, as well as concerns over COVID. And as such, Hong Kong also faced fluctuations, but Hong Kong's market displayed great resilience and a solid foundation. And the transactions and clearing operations did not face any systemic risks. The government and regulators will continue to monitor the market, and we will monitor the derivative tools, and we will strive to maintain financial stability for Hong Kong. Our foreign exchange reserve is more than 130% of the GDP and about 1.8 times of our monetary supply. In face of the pandemic and other risk factors, we maintain confidence that we can maintain the stability of our financial system. The IMF in March announced an analysis report on Hong Kong, and it ascertained our status as a main international financial center, and we have showed great resilience. They believe that our financial markets have continued to expand despite the pandemic. In the latest Global Financial Center Index, Hong Kong's status has been acknowledged again. We again ranked third in the world. And now I'd like to talk about the government's support measures on the financial industries. The FSTB had earlier provided support to the securities and precious metals trades by offering cash support under the anti-epidemic fund. Both schemes amounted to more than 100 million Hong Kong dollars. In face of the fifth wave of the pandemic, the financial services have seen relatively little losses. We decided to focus our resources on the most affected industries or SMEs. Earlier, the CE announced that a new round of employment support scheme would be rolled out, and we would look to maximize its benefit. For SMEs or financial institutions such as securities firms and asset management companies with no more than 50 staff would be eligible. We also paid attention to the financial services and accounting trade, and we have continued to provide support. the Inland Revenue Department announced that the deadlines for furnishing tax returns for different types of taxes would be deferred again to relieve the burden on enterprises. The Hong Kong Exchange also updated its guidelines to provide greater facilitation to the trade. The FSTB will continue to provide coordination among different financial institutions and regulators to provide timely support. And we will continue to provide guidelines to the trade.
Third, we will strengthen our policy to nurture and retain our talents. As the financial center internationally, under the epidemic, we strive to maintain and strengthen our connections with the global market and strengthen our talent pool. The Chief Executive has announced the interim review to fight the epidemic. A series of measures were implemented, including a lifting flights ban, quarantine period for 7 days, and also early discharge from quarantine hotels subject to RAT negative results, and also home self-monitoring. We have responded to the major concerns of the business sectors. After the announcements of the review measures, I have discussed the measures with the stakeholders, and I understand that the measures have received warm welcome from the sector. After the epidemic has passed, we will continue to strengthen the talent pool and offer more opportunities for the financial sector. The focus will be on using fintech as well as green financing. In the latest budget, the FS has announced new measures. That is to provide subsidy for green financing and fintech talents, as well as incorporating such fields in the qualification framework. We have a comprehensive strategy to develop such talents. We will help those in school to learn financial skills, and also we will strengthen those in work. Previously, we have rolled out the first schemes for new graduates, and also we have the pilot scheme to subsidize financial talents. I'm confident that with the supporting measures, our talent pool will continue to grow. In short, during the fight against the epidemic, we will continue to maintain a financial stability, continue to provide support for the sector, and also we will look ahead and devise of more measures to consolidate the sector and strengthen our talents so that our financial developments can continue. Now we will take questions. Please raise your hands, and please identify your media organization and put questions with the microphone. The gentleman over there. Good morning, Chief Executive and Secretary. I'm from CCTV. Now, the mainland Chinese medicine experts have arrived at Hong Kong yesterday. So how will they collaborate with our medical staff in Hong Kong? Every day, the daily new infection number has climbed down to a 4-digit number. So why are we using the collaborated method to fight the epidemic, and how will it help? Now, since the 5th wave, there are analyses saying that the cause may be the gaps, the loopholes in quarantine hotels. Now, the flight bans will be lifted for 9 places, and the returnees will be subject to hotel quarantine. In face of that, how will the government enhance the quarantine, the infection control measures for quarantine hotels to avoid a similar situation from happening again? Thank you for your 2 questions. Yesterday, I received the latest delegation of mainland experts, comprising 7 experts. They are all experts in the field of traditional Chinese medicine. The leader is Mr. Tong Xiaolin, leader of the National Administration of TCM. He participated in treatment work in the past 2 years. They will offer helps in several areas. Together with the previous batch of experts led by Professor Liang Wannian, we will put focus on 3 aspects. That is the reduction of severe cases, deaths, and infections. Now, traditional Chinese medicine has played an important role in terms of the treatment. We should increase the application of a TCM in terms of achieving reduction in severe cases and deaths. 2 weeks ago, we received the 300-strong medical team from the mainland. The leader of the group is a Chinese medicine practitioner. He is Mr. Zhang Zhongde, the chief of a Chinese medicine hospital in the mainland. He has joined the fight and provided treatments to patients in 10 places in the mainland. Dr. Zhang Zhongde is also the deputy leader of the team. He also joined me in receiving Dr. Tong Xiaolin. Dr. Zhang told me that during the past 2 weeks in the AWE Community Treatment Center, his team has been providing treatments together with our HA staff. It is very inspiring in terms of future TCM development. First, it is a breakthrough that the same patients would be consulted with both Western and Chinese medicine doctor, and also both doctors would make wards together. And also, the prescription will be decided by both doctors. And also, the doctors would discuss the treatment course and developments of the patients together. This is something very rare in the past in Hong Kong. Our public medical healthcare system is comprised with Western doctors, and Chinese medicine doctors are serving the private market. The collaboration between Western and Chinese medicine doctors can help us achieve the 3 reductions goal, and also it will chart a new path forward for TCM development. We will arrange discussion and exchanges between TCM experts from the mainland and our local practitioners to listen to the views on TCM developments in Hong Kong. With the declining number of cases, there are 2 priorities. First, prevention of infection. Second, speeding up convalescence of patients. In these 2 areas, traditional Chinese medicine may serve a better purpose than Western medicine. The characteristic of TCM is a prevention of disease. So in terms of preventing infection, it is very effective. Now, the Chinese medicine faculty in the Baptist University has invented a new concoction, and it is now being prescribed. We Chinese always say that we have to in order to recover after major operations, we have to resort to TCM. So we will apply TCM in terms of to help recovery.
The HA, under the 18 Chinese medicine clinics, have been providing free treatment courses to patients. They will receive 10 free visits. The mainland Chinese medicine experts will play a significant role in epidemic control in Hong Kong. At this stage of the pandemic, we must continue to prevent imported cases, and that's why arrivals would have to go to quarantine hotels. But we must also allow residents, including those from the 9 specific places, to come back to Hong Kong. And as such, the flight embargo from these places would be cancelled from April the 1st. Residents who have booked a quarantine hotel can come back afterwards. We have very strict requirements on quarantine hotels. They must observe all the necessary requirements, including ventilation, etc. In the 5th wave, there was one case in which infection took place in a quarantine hotel, but you could not say this is an inadequacy in the system. It was more an unfortunate event. A quarantine person who, towards the end of his quarantine, was infected by someone else in the hotel, and as such, that person entered the community with the virus. But nonetheless, we have requirements in place for all quarantine hotels, and we would also monitor the implementation of such arrangements. Next question, please. The gentleman in red on the front row. I'm from AM 730. Under the pandemic, both overseas companies and local merchants are suffering. In recent days, some restaurant owners took out advertisements requesting the government to lift the gathering prohibitions and the border controls. Some experts have proposed a roadmap for life to return to normal. After the social distancing measures gradually relax, is there a timetable for lifting the requirement of wearing masks or gathering prohibition? That way, the public would have a clearer idea on the government's plans. During winter solstice in 2019, the LCSD and police threw away the belongings of the homeless in Shen Shui Po. The Small Claims Tribunal awarded the case in favor of the homeless people. Would the government apologize to these homeless people, and would you urge the government to be more respectful towards them? And would you provide additional compensation? Chief Executive, when you were Chief Secretary, you resigned about 1 month before the nomination started, and your predecessor announced that he would not run 2 months ahead. Sunday will mark the start of the nomination period. Would you tell the public clearly whether you will or will not run for the next Chief Executive? You would not give an answer. Can you tell us why? For the third question, I have answered a number of times. The nomination period for the next CE will begin on April the 3rd. My only priority is fighting the pandemic. I have no other answers for you. your two other questions were about the impacts faced by local merchants, and of course we are aware of that, and we have provided a lot of support measures. We have rolled out 6 rounds of the AEF. They were implemented swiftly, and funds were dispersed efficiently. We rolled out the 2022 Employment Support Scheme as well, and this round mainly targets SMEs. Like Mr. Hu said, in the financial arena, we would no longer offer support to the big enterprises, but for those with less than 50 employees, we will continue to offer a wage subsidy. As for the future roadmap in epidemic control, of course, this would relate to the state of the pandemic. On the 21st of March, I have offered a roadmap which would be useful to the public. That is, if the pandemic continues to show a declining trend, as we saw in the last few days, from April the 21st, most social distancing measures could be gradually relaxed across 3 months in 3 phases. And not many measures would remain in the 3rd stage, but apparently the gathering prohibitions and the requirement of wearing masks will persist for some time. We will announce details of the relaxation soon, so please stay tuned. As for the case you mentioned, it falls under the ambit of the LCSD. I believe they can address your specific questions. I'm aware that an organization said the SAR government does not care about the homeless, and they do not know which department is responsible, and I can address this question. The Social Welfare Department would be responsible. I used to be Director of Social Welfare for about 3 years. Supporting the homeless was one of my key areas of work. And we also propose measures to support the homeless. And we also supported a number of NGOs that seek to help the homeless. We have provided support and subsidies so that these NGOs could set up hostels for the homeless and provide employment support. I would request the relevant department to continue to properly support the homeless. Next question, please. The gentleman to my right. I'm from Now TV. Mrs. Lam, you said you met representatives from some business chambers yesterday. Can you tell us about the response offered by the Consul General in terms of the lifting of the flight ban? There's no timetable yet to the reopening of the borders. Do you feel that the overseas companies would not quit or withdraw from Hong Kong? Is the priority to reopen the borders with the mainland first? Can you tell us more about the government's current stance?
Concerning the issue of resumption of travel, that is the gradual resumption of travel of people, no matter with the mainland or with the overseas, it is still our key work. I've mentioned the government stance a number of times. We want to resume a cross-boundary travel with the mainland as well as with overseas countries. Hong Kong's advantage lies in its role as a bridge or a connection between people. We are a springboard to reach out to the world. Our purpose is to serve as a bridge between the mainland and overseas. Of course, we want to introduce, we want to let investors to come to Hong Kong. However, if they can't reach the mainland through Hong Kong, it will undermine the purpose. That's why I learned from the IBC that our value to foreign investors lie in our role as a bridge between the world and China and the nation. So actually, we can still go to the mainland subject to fulfillment of conditions and quarantine. And also, we have lifted the flight ban for 9 countries, which means that people from different countries can come to Hong Kong if you have fulfilled the pre-boarding arrangements and also the post-arrival quarantine arrangement. So in terms of which one would come first, it depends. Yesterday, I met with 130 representatives. Mr. Christopher Hui was also there online with us. The business sector welcomes the measures announced earlier on. Some participants consider that we should do more. They would prefer a home quarantine rather than hotel quarantine. We explained that we cannot do that at this moment. Recently, many overseas countries have relaxed their measures and it posed a risk. And the participants told us their concerns over education and also arrangements for international schools after resumption of in-person classes. They emphasized the importance of resumption of cross-boundary travel with the mainland. As I've mentioned, that is the most important factor. So the atmosphere at yesterday's meeting was harmonious and pragmatic. The goal is to resume economic development after the epidemic. Let's take an English question. The gentleman over there.
Good morning, Hong Kong Free Press. Mr. Hoy, this month a business chamber survey showed half of European firms are considering leaving next year. Unlike Singapore, we have no roadmap to normalcy. You know, what CEO is going to come in for a 7-day quarantine for a meeting or conference? Some say the adjustments to travel rules are too late to save the city's international status. What is your message to the businesses who are leaving? Second, Mrs. Lam, on TCM, yesterday you said the use of Chinese medicine in curing infected COVID-19 patients has proven to be very effective on the mainland. Can you share which medicines you're referring to there? And in terms of sending out TCM to particularly older residents, do you think there is a fear of disincentivizing them to get vaccinated if they prefer TCM? And finally, you said last week that the next administration can review the Omicron crisis, but many on your own side blame you for inaction. Last year, with among the highest death rate in the world and 7,000 dead. At the end of your tenure now, have you any regrets on COVID or things you would do differently? Thank you.
I'll answer the last 2 questions, and then Chris could supplement on the situation of the business sentiment. About the use of traditional Chinese medicine, this is not something new in Hong Kong. Being a predominantly Chinese community, many of us actually use Chinese medicine at various stages of keeping ourselves healthy or for rehabilitation purpose. But in tackling COVID-19, because our focus is now on preventing critical illness and preventing deaths. So as I have just mentioned, in our public hospital system, so far, is mainly the mainstream is Western medicine. We don't even have one single Chinese medicine hospital. We are building one in Jiangguangou, but we did not have. There is a certain degree of application of Chinese medicine on a very small scale in our public hospitals, but the fact is the development of Chinese medicine in Hong Kong has been constrained by many factors because of the history. But it doesn't mean that it is not effective. Well, in the mainland of China, I was told by the experts, I read a lot of literature, and how they are able to cure critically ill COVID-19 patients. There was a figure given to me yesterday, but I couldn't recall it now, that many of the serious and critical cases in various provinces during the last 2 years of the epidemic have been treated effectively through application of Chinese medicine. And the experts that we have invited to Hong Kong will certainly give us good advice on this. We already have a 2 weeks experience of some Chinese medicine practitioners curing and looking after patients, especially elderly patients, at the Community Treatment Center at the Asia World Expo. Now, you asked specifically about our sending traditional Chinese medicine to all residents and whether this would disincentivize vaccination. The proprietary Chinese medicine tablets that we are sending in the anti-epidemic bag to all the households in Hong Kong are for treatment. It's just like Panadol or paracetamol. It's not for prevention, okay? So vaccination remains the most effective means to prevent an infected person becoming seriously or critically ill. There is no contradiction whatsoever between the two missions. One is to give Hong Kong residents some sort of safeguards. When they fall ill, they could have paracetamol, they could have this proprietary Chinese medicine to cure, especially if they have mild fever. Second mission is to continue to encourage vaccination, especially amongst the elderly and the young. And this is very welcome. I have to tell you that the proprietary Chinese medicine are very much welcome by the people of Hong Kong whenever we go out to distribute this supplies donated or given to us by the central government. We are all saddened by the large number of fatalities in this epidemic. And that's why we are doing our utmost in order to safeguard the health and safety of the Hong Kong people. We have a long list of measures that we have introduced, we have improved, we have enhanced in order to safeguard the health and safety of the elderly people, and we will continue to do so. So this is at the moment one of our priorities, and we will continue to spare no effort in helping the elderly to save their lives. Chris.
Thanks, Chief CE. In response to the questions regarding what are the messages that we want to convey to the business community, I think there are two. Firstly, in light of this COVID situation, which is a global phenomenon, I think similar to every other jurisdiction, we are doing our part on various fronts to deal with it. And with response to many of the comments that have been made by the business, and in particular the financial service sector, regarding some of the measures that we put forward, I think as highlighted by Chief Executive, we have announced a series of streamlining measures as highlighted. And based on our frequent interactions with the business and commercial sector, they are very much welcomed and well received. So on that basis, adhering to the overall principle in terms of our anti-epidemic efforts, we'll continue to make sure that the comments that made by the sector, including the emphasis on connectivity, including the mainland and the rest of the world, the comments made regarding the schooling and also other aspects of the people's lives will be taken care of as we chart the way forward. That's number one. And number two, and the key message I want to convey is regarding Hong Kong being open to business. Because after all, if we look at the place where people or companies try to locate their business, definitely opportunities and talent are the key. And on that count, based on what I just introduced at the outset on the various measures we put forward to broaden the development scope of our sector, at the same time to nurture our talent pool, I think all these efforts will continue and also continue to be strengthened in such a way that Hong Kong will continue to be open to business to the rest of the world.
好，跟住係下一位記者嘅提問。
Next question, please. The gentleman in the middle, please. The HK Public Opinion Research Institute announced poll results saying that 72% of the Hong Kong people were dissatisfied with the performance of the government. And what is your take on the result? And do you see any room to improvement? According to a recent HAU survey, the suicide rate of Hong Kong peaked on the 23rd of March, and among which the majority were elderly people. Some academics said our recreational facilities should be reopened as soon as possible. Do you believe that the government's sole focus was on fighting the pandemic while ignoring the mental well-being of the people? Hong Kong is a liberal and diverse society. Any individual or institute can freely comment on anything, including the work and performance of the Hong Kong SAR government. We will remain open and humble in taking in views from different parties in order to improve our work. Over the past 5 years, the current term government has done a lot of work. In the 2021 policy address, I compiled a summary to provide a recap on the work of the current term government, but some areas of work take time. Since January 2020, in the first 2 years, we were relatively successful. Many overseas institutions confirmed Hong Kong's success, but in light of the fifth wave of the pandemic and the high transmissibility of the Omicron strain, together with other factors, this wave of the pandemic came rapidly, and since January, we have put in place the most stringent measures to prevent local and imported cases, and we have urged the public to comply with these requirements. And when we saw that we were unable to deal with the matter ourselves, we sought help immediately from the central government, and right away they offered assistance on many fronts. So we have done our best. As to whether we would review our own work, well, every day at the press conference, I have taken in comments from different parties. For the public to maintain confidence and positive mental or good mental health, we need more positivity from the community. That's why we have called for everyone to disseminate positive messages, and that the government has expressed care for the public. I hope our society can instill more positive messages and continue to fight the pandemic together. You could volunteer to help distribute anti-epidemic kits and call your relatives, friends and neighbors to see what they need, and the media could report more positive stories. RTHK 32 became a dedicated channel for anti-epidemic information. They have came up with a lot of very positive reports and stories. These would help the public face the pandemic and enhance their resilience while maintaining confidence in Hong Kong. Next question, please. This is TVB. We talked about the loss of overseas companies or executives, and you didn't deny the facts. Can you share any figures with us? And a reporter asked in English that some overseas companies were disappointed that they still need to be quarantined upon arrival in Hong Kong. So is the government's plan to reinstate confidence among these companies by providing the information and figures. President Xi said we need to prevent the importation of cases, but we are going to lift the flight ban for visitors from 9 places. Should we first maintain or resume connectivity with the rest of the world before we reopen the borders with the mainland? Otherwise, Hong Kong might become a loophole. In terms of the anti-epidemic kits, they will be distributed from Saturday, but some organizations who are offering assistance are yet to receive the necessary information, and they find it hard to brief their volunteers. Are you worried that chaos might be seen? I would first address the question on the anti-epidemic service kits. Today is the 30th of April of March, and we will begin the first stage of the work, and that includes packaging. Myself, together with my secretaries, we would visit packaging centers this afternoon to take part in the packaging work. We need to package 3.5 million kits. Apart from civil servants, there will be volunteers who take part. And after that, on the 1st or 2nd of April, we will begin distributing kits to all households in Hong Kong. By then, we will need even more volunteers. The housing department can help distribute the kits to public housing estates. For private estates, management companies can offer help. But many households are staying in 3-nil buildings, Chinese tenement buildings or villages. We need more help from volunteers. I did not hear about any difficulties faced. I had a video conference meeting with some 150 opinion leaders or religious leaders. If they face any difficulties, they can tell us, or the Home Affairs Department. This is a massive exercise, so for any organizations who wish to provide volunteers, but found that many people are already taking part, this could be the case. But for anyone who wants to offer help, well, whether they actually took part at the end, I still thank them for their gestures. As for preventing the importation of cases, this continues to be our strategy. The SAR government never gave up on any measures to prevent the importation of cases. But the flight ban, which has been in place for 3 months, was a very strict measure. It could be even more stringent than measures on the mainland. We have not allowed Hong Kong residents to come back. We are merely rationalizing this measure to allow anxious Hong Kong residents to come back. This does not amount to a relaxation of the measures that prevent importation of cases. In fact, like I said, in the video conference meeting yesterday, many foreign consuls general felt that our measures were too stringent. The requirements in their own countries were relaxed a long time ago, and in some cases, mask wearing was no longer needed. But this is not the case in Hong Kong. We cannot let our guards down. We continue to review how we can rationalize our measures. From April the 1st, many people would come back to Hong Kong from these 9 places. So how can we streamline the procedures at our airport to battle the pandemic? So please do not describe our measure as a relaxation of the of our measures to avoid importation of cases. Of course, strict measures would affect confidence among foreign companies. If you have difficulties coming back or coming home to visit your family, but once you return to Hong Kong, you are subject to a 7-day quarantine period. This is inevitable. But in order to protect the well-being of Hong Kong people, or in your words, we don't want Hong Kong to become a loophole of imported cases due to the travel allowed. We must continue our work.
一個短暫一朝一夕嘅信心啦，外資嘅信心應該係對香港呢個城市、對一國兩制、對中央點樣睇香港嘅信心。從金融嘅領域，我睇唔到有另一個嘅經濟體或者另一個城市有我哋嗰種嚟自中央嘅支持。資本市場嘅互聯互通，從滬港通到深港通到債券通到理財通，我睇唔到有另一個經濟體有呢一種優勢。咁如果外資都睇唔到咧
，and stock exchange connect.
我知道外資係睇得到嘅。
We have received the best support from the central authorities.
亦都係呢個原因，舊年嘅。
If the foreign investors can see that, they will know that we are a place where businesses can make a profit. Last year, we have seen earnings from profits tax increased, and these are all indicators of confidence.
都應該增強信心，應該去揾呢啲正面嘅指標嚟到去報導。
As a part of Hong Kong, we should report these positive indicators. In terms of talents,
我聽到，同埋即係都有啲人講話，我間公司咧就係少咗啲人。
I have heard
國際學校話俾我聽咧，下一個學年咧就
that international schools or schools are losing students in the next academic year.
要知道嘅情況。
We have heard these views, and we are aware of the situation.
有幾多人離開香港係因為移民？
We don't have
冇
a
移民嘅數字。
breakdown
個數字咧係一個簡單
about
係一
the
個時候
number of emigration.
流入同埋流出或者叫移入或者移出。
We only have the number of people coming in and moving out at a certain time. If the number of people leaving exceeds the number of people coming in, then it is a net outflow. Then some media would treat the net outflow as an immigration figure. That's inaccurate. When the Census and Statistics Department announced the 2021 survey, census, I read the press release myself, and I told them we need to tell people what's the factors affecting people moving in and out. In the past 2 years, the factors are obvious. First, restriction of travel. Now we have 150 one-way permit issued each day, so that would be equivalent to 55,000 people per year. Because of the restriction of travel, in year 2020, only 10,100 people have moved in, compared with the 39,100 people in year 2019. That's only one-third. Year 2021, we had only 17,900 people moving in, so that's drastically reduced the number of people coming in. The other factor is a foreign domestic helper. At its peak, according to the Secretary of Labour and Welfare, we have 400,000 foreign domestic helpers coming in. The latest figure, however, is fewer than 340,000. So that's another reduction. So the net inflow and outflow figure is not accurate in telling us how many people have emigrated. For example, starting the 1st of April, when people from 9 countries will come back, according to my figure at hand, there will be some 2,000 people coming in. Today, it is just 200 or to 300 people. So does that mean that people are feeling very confident and they are coming back? So you cannot treat the net inflow figures as indicators of confidence. You should refer to two figures in terms of whether Hong Kong is still attractive. First, the talent scheme. We have a very high standard for the quality migrant admission scheme. We have 1,000 quota places each year for those who have received a lot of awards, say elite athletes. They will be admitted to Hong Kong. In my term of office, I have increased the quota places 2 times. In year 2020, I increased the number from 1,000 to 2,000. In year 2021, I increased the number from 2,000 to 4,000. And the number of people approved has increased. In year 2020, 1,700 people were admitted. So the 700 people would not be able to come to Hong Kong if I hadn't increased the number. Last year, the number approved increased to 2,000. That's one indicator for you. The other indicator is whether our tertiary institution is still attractive for youngsters. Despite the strict travel restriction measures and the quarantine measures, for the 8 tertiary institutions under the UGC, the University Grants Committee, we have more students from overseas for academic year 21 to 22. Of course, there are more mainland students coming to Hong Kong rather than those from overseas because of the flight bans. So these two sets of figures are meaningful. That is our attraction for talents and elite students. We are still very attractive. That's why I believe that Hong Kong is still a talent pool. However, talents are mobile. They can come and go, and they can also return. So the most important thing is we are still attractive to talents. So I'm very optimistic in terms of the future development, including financial sector. So that's it for the press briefing, and see you tomorrow.